So my name's Amy Day. I'm also known as Amy Matheson Day. So if anybody knows David Matheson or Jim Matheson, that's my clan. And I was one of those lucky people in the early days, starting back probably in 1966 when I was born, that Ron Howard was a part of our life, and Jim Matheson's my dad, and Carl Spetzler, and all these early pioneers in this huge, amazing field. I was raised on the island of decision analysis. So I'm a native speaker. There was never a chain. There was never a process. It was just always a conversation. And it wasn't until a few years ago that I realized I actually had something that was uniquely different than almost everybody else I knew. Now, I have to say, the people in this room, you are all, if you were not raised on the island of decision analysis, you are all naturalized citizens. So welcome. I have a background as an educator, as a hybrid homeschooler. I have a background in decision education, and I have a nonprofit called Clarity for Action where we teach teens and parents and adults who care about teens and young people decision-making skills. So it's awesome. So we're here. I'm here with my buddy Tyler, and we're here to talk to you in the fastest possible way to get the most content as well as really applicable tools for yourself and what you want to be doing as a naturalized citizen of the island of DA in your life as you go out and interact with young people in a variety of ways that you get to help yourself identify. So my friend Tyler here, would you like to say a couple words about yourself?
Okay, so my name's Tyler Ludlow. I became a naturalized citizen a little over a decade ago. Practiced DADQ first at Unilever in the UK, then at Lilly for 6.5 years or so. I left Lilly last year. I'm now on my own. I have a couple of businesses, one focused on regular Joe people learning decision skills, and the other sort of on pharma consulting advice and stuff. I've got 9 kids at home.
Scary. And he's a homeschooler.
So I am in front of a mini 9 kids. And yeah, that's probably my introduction.
Thank you. Yeah, no kidding.
My wife, I'll pass it on.
Yeah, I only have 3, so. All right. Is this our poll, Tyler? It looks interesting. Did you pre-fill this? And did everybody really do?
High tech.
See, you got to have a lot of, your sample size has to be big.
This is the question to make sure you're in the right room, because if you answer a certain way, then...
Yeah.
Are we logging in as DAG 2 or DAG 3?
Well, apparently we're logging in as high tech.
Yeah, I have no idea. Yeah, cool.
Is it. So yes, thank you, John.
Nice. I was going to say, anybody who strongly disagree, maybe you'd like to nerd out next door with the probability distributions that sound amazing.
We can have the infomercial to attract.
No, it's okay. We're so pleased you all are here, though. It's wonderful. This is actually, I was like, hey, Tyler, we might just have 5 people, and that's a win for me. So, great.
What are we doing?
Do we lock up the poll? Tyler's running the poll here.
Because it doesn't show on this form how many, whenever you're ready.
Okay.
We have 2 more questions.
We have 2 more questions. Okay, so 2/3 of you say, yeah, everywhere would benefit strongly. And most people, there's only 4% of you who are neutral about it. Okay, which decision education activities have you been involved in with youth? As you're answering this, I want you to notice the number one item we have on that list is a one-on-one conversation. Because it only let you select one? Oh, sad. That's okay. Because I think oftentimes we hear that we're supposed to be doing more, and we're supposed to be doing things to advance the cause with young people. And I personally want to recognize, and Tyler wants to recognize, that actually one-on-one conversations is meaningful, significant, important to whoever it is that you're talking to, because you're naturalizing a citizen, right? You're helping them become a part of the island of decision analysis. There are other ways to reach more people, and we'll talk more about that, but really congratulate yourself that you're just even having one-on-one conversations, bringing it to the everyday person. Last question. Which best describes you? So our talk is in front of teens or behind the scenes with teens, right? So I am or may be interested in working behind the scenes with youth, coordinate or support an event. I'm interested in working in front of teens, facilitate an event. Or C, I'm soon to be or recently retired and may be interested in either.
Either.
It's crazy, you know, in this field that has not been around that long, the people who started in this field are starting to retire. So what does that look like? Was that you, Jim? Were you C? Great, so 76%, are you surprised, Tyler?
A little.
Yeah, awesome. Okay. So I'm just going to fire hose you. I apologize because I want to get to the activities that we have planned for you. So part of what we did at Clarity for Action, we're a 501c3, so we're a nonprofit. Yeah, of course. Go right ahead. Yes, you can take pictures. It's fine. You also have flyers on your table. I just put 1 or 2 flyers that have this process on them. I have a stack here. If you'd like one, just take it, please. Anyway, what we decided to do was actually put a framework around teaching people about decision making and how to make it easier to understand, easier to just kind of put into buckets to make sure that you're thinking about the whole person, not just a decision process. Decision process is really useful, but if you don't, as a young person or as a parent coaching a young person or an adult, if you don't have a clear idea about what that person's values are, then there's no momentum for the decision-making process. And what we mean by values are, what's your core motivation? Who am I? What do I value? Do I value community? Do I value family? Do I value friends? Do I value sports? Like, it could be a million things. What are my preferences? And what are my personal strengths? Right? I have a son who's totally visual. Awesome. He gets to just embrace that as a strength and not necessarily, like, the whole notion about how something's a strength or a weakness. No, just embrace your strengths and address your life from a position of power. And then MIOS is my internal operating system. It's amazing to me how brains, like, we inherit this as a human being, this body and this brain and this processing system. And actually, as I was listening to the AI stuff, really young people are machine learning all the time. So they're iterating, but they have no idea that actually, they have their brain functions a certain way. They have decision fitness and biases, so that would be, am I emotionally regulated, right? They have habits, they have fear, anxiety, they have attitudes about risk, and they need to have time for self-reflection. So some of the things we talk about, we have a much more involved way to talk about this, but this is the short version. Halt. Don't make a decision if you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. If you don't have to, why would you? So we have some ideas. Have a snack. Call it out when unfit to decide. I will tell my kids at 2:30 in the morning when they come and say, I got to talk to you about this thing. And I'll say, I can talk. You are not deciding tonight or this morning because you are not decision fit, right? So we can decide tomorrow, but I'm happy to have you offload. Lonely, connect with somebody. By the way, we're happy to share these slides, so just so you know. Also, teen brains are under construction. By telling them about cognitive biases, which they love, you make the invisible visible for them. They start to understand that their brain is involved, like, what does it mean to be a human being? How are people tricking me? There's a lot of ways people are tricking them. And recognizing what's under their control or not under their control, because that's actually where anxiety lives and fear. I think we deal with that as adults. We just fake it really well. Then we have a decision process. You guys all know this part. You're good at this, right? And then we have action. Young people are not project managers typically. So we need to help them with communication and practical tools and understanding that they have people to support them and explain things to them. So this VITA process, what it does is it really pulls out your values and the important things about the why motivates strong commitment. And you can see this in scientific studies that have been done about values identification, how important it is for actually energizing your decision making through action. And a cool head finds good answers with the what and the how. So that's the quick version. So we're going to do a values exercise now. So there's a stack of papers in the middle of your table. Now this is relevant to all of you because you're going to plug into your values later on. But we wanted to have you do an appropriate exercise for you as professionals to think about values and to think about what drives what you do. So think about a teacher or mentor who has supported you in a meaningful way. Describe the experience in only a few sentences. And then circle key words that resonate with you. Okay, so just finish up writing and then circle those keywords. And what we would like you to do is pair up. So find a neighbor. If you need to have 3 people or if somebody needs to move, that's fine. So you're going to find a partner and you're going to ask each other these questions. What is it about blank that is important to you? So what is it about these important things they've circled in their paper that's important to them? Why is that important? And tell me more, right? I think that as you're pairing up, I'll just keep talking. The important thing about this is when we think about young people, they're developing skills. So it's a long view. It's not maximizing this decision every time. It's how can I do the best I can on this decision, reflect, practice, do it again, create the habit of good decision making over time. So it's a long view. The way you're going to get to their values is by having a conversation. So go ahead and pair up and start. And if you have questions, just flag us down. Okay. So how did you guys like that? How'd that go? Was it fun? Did you learn something? I think the amazing thing for you all, for all of us as adults to reflect upon is people who have influenced our lives as mentors or teachers, how they were with us. And what was meaningful about that is kind of unique for each of us, but has similarities for other people. But that's maybe actually the kind of person you should maybe think about being or to channel when you're actually interacting with a young person, right? It is actually through relationship and conversation where you can make a connection with young people, whether I have a class of 30 students or I just am coaching one student. It's always through relationship and through conversation and maybe an activity to get to their values. So the question you might ask a student about themselves might look different for values identification. But those, what is it about this? Why is that important to you? Tell me more. That's when you really get to the generation of value, but actually a why attached to it. The why is what's important. So if I value sports and Tyler, that he loves basketball, he likes sports. Maybe I love sports because I love community and supporting each other. Tyler there, yeah, he loves community and supporting people, but really, he wants to be like just be challenged as a person to do his very best. 2 totally different reasons why, same exact value. So the why is actually really relevant. Does anybody have any burning comment about that process? Or, yeah? Right. So if you couldn't hear David, he was just saying he's used it as a facilitation, something similar with professional community, and it really tapped in to something much deeper in a process that's a analytical decision process and made it much more robust. So, yeah. So he works with teens as a mentor. And a lot of times they get tripped up because they've actually made a decision that has nothing to do with their values. And they can't pick up the phone to call the college to get the information, right? But as soon as you tap into their values, suddenly, even though they're terrified, they pick up the phone. They actually can take action. It's directly linked to action, for sure, of having it be a meaningful, robust process for them. So really important that it's a part of emotional regulation. They don't know how to necessarily process everything. It doesn't all have to be done at once. You can say, wow, how is this going on for you? What's going on? If it's, your child, what's going on? You seem upset. Would you like to come back to this later? Or is there something frustrating? You can probe it further in a different way to maybe understand what's anxiety producing. But yeah, you do have to be careful. And sometimes they do not want to listen to you. It is not your fault. And you guys are so much better than a class of 30 teenagers. You're way more awake. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next phase. I'm going to let my friend Tyler kind of.
And Amy and I were chatting, and there's a story that I sometimes use in teaching DADQ professionally, and it involves, we were on vacation once, and it's a longer story, but essentially my son wanted to leave earlier than we'd originally planned. He wanted to make it back home in time for a basketball game that he had. He and my wife had started out having this conversation, and I entered on the sort of the back half of it, and they were talking about, driving on the road at 5 a.m., which was earlier than they planned. And so I said, Adam, what is it about making it back in time for your basketball game that's so important to you? And to your comment, right, there was something there that wasn't challenging to him, however that dimension was. And he's 16, and he's the type of kid that doesn't open up, he doesn't share much. He frequently isn't even aware of his own emotions. He's the kid that, when he was young, he would walk around in the winter in a t-shirt because he wasn't aware that he was cold. Just different kids, different personalities, but that's kind of Adam. And when I asked him, what is it about making it back in time for your game that's so important to you? He paused for a moment, and then he said, well, I want my coaches to know how committed I am to the team. He was a sophomore playing on a varsity basketball team with older players. He didn't get a lot of playing time, didn't anticipate getting playing time, but he really wanted his coaches to know that he was in it, even though he wasn't always on the court. He thought that would be a really strong communication thing. That comment led to us really looking at the decision completely different. Understood his values in a way that, it's never good to ask anyone, what are your values? It's the dumbest question, right? I probably said it many times when it started, but you figure out better ways to get to those values. And what is it about this that excites you, or things like that. And that's what this activity was about for me, was a way to be able to have a straight up real conversation, but from it be able to gain an idea of insight into values. So
David has a question.
Oh, David has a question.
Take this or not as you can, but it's interesting because I think the relationship of a parent to child is quite different as a relation from a concerned adult. Or, I was just wondering if you could comment. The relationship parent to child in coaching children is quite different than the relationship of a sort of teacher or trusted friend. I mean, I think when my kids are in the teenage, they get better advice from the neighbor parents than from us.
I've spent time with Kate. She's amazing.
Yeah.
She'll open up to me. I don't know what's wrong with you.
So if you could just comment on that. It might pertain to his point too,
I'm
right?
happy to comment, and if you, yeah.
Well, so the second bullet that this says it's not consulting, I think would feed to this, because I've learned that I think I'm a reasonably good dad. I'm sure I could be better. I think I'm all right. But there's been a couple handfuls of times where my kids, for whatever reason, typically the older teens, we've actually sat down and had a legit sort of decision conversation. And when we do that, I ask more open-ended questions. It changes it. And but the thing I've also learned is that I'm not walking in as a consultant. And this is where to get to your question, I think the big difference is that as a parent, you're in the long game.
Yeah.
And so even more important than the decision at hand is the learning and the process that is the experience and the skill set that's gained as you're going through it.
So I have 2 comments for you, David, and for the rest of you. Number 1, your children, no fault of your own, are actually being raised on the island of decision analysis. So you may never say probability or alternatives. I say, well, what could you do? I don't even ask them a word that looks like DA, right? But it's the same thing. It's in common language. It's in their language and their understanding. So in the situation of a parent versus a coaching sort of situation, you're going to get way more pushback from your own kids. But you're modeling it all the time. So by saying to my son Elliot, he's the one who shows up at 2:30 in the morning, really stressed out. And when I say to him, you're not decision fit right now, and I'm not decision fit. Like neither of us is decision fit. At 22, he will tell me, Mom, you're not decision fit right now. So just warning you, kind of comes back to bite you maybe. But they are being raised by that modeling every day in their lives, whether they like it or not. They're a native speaker. And so I do get comfort from that. I do get calls from my oldest son, Nick, saying, I had a bad outcome and I made a great decision. I just listened and said, I'm really sorry. Are you going to do it the same way next time? Yeah, great. Odds are it's going to go really well. That's just bad luck. Like I don't even say any, fancy DQ words. Just bad luck. That's a good decision, bad outcome. Right? If it's a bad decision, that's a whole nother conversation. Okay,
So,
we want you to do another exercise.
Let me just, for like a
Setup.
minute, give you just a little bit of setup.
I think you have a slide with your setup.
No, this is it.
Oh,
So about 4 or 5 years ago, I decided, I want to do more with just DA, DQ. I'd like to kind of share it. Actually, it was shortly after I met Amy,
Yeah.
and I had an idea of how to do that. I came back to Indianapolis, where we live, and ended up teaching decision stuff in a science class, and then ended up doing it with this group of teens that would meet once a month. It was on campus at Lilly. It was organized by an individual there, and so for about 3 or 4 years, I would go and just give a 2-hour awareness, sort of, this is a career area, play some games and stuff that I stole from Amy and folks at DEF. But that was this Lilly Science Explorers. And one time when we did it, we had this, I think it's a great idea, but we had this activity, this awareness thing, and then the kids had learned a little bit about DQ. And the way that you probably have a vision in your mind of what a science fair looks like, we decided we'd have a decision fair. And so the kids went away, they worked on their own decision problem, and then they came back with a poster, and they walked through that was their project, their science fair project, so to speak. And we had a couple other folks, Stuart, Jay, who's in the other room, a couple of folks from Lilly who came in as judges and got to walk around, and it was a great experience. And then one time we also had an experience at Lilly where we brought Amy and one of our colleagues in to do 2 days of training for children of the Lilly employees, so on site at Lilly. And the coolest part I was really excited about bringing him in. I wanted to do that for about a year or more. I was inspired by Intel had done a similar thing on a Saturday. We did this on when the kids had a week off in the fall time. They have a week off. And they came in for 2 days. And the really cool part that worked out a million times better than I thought it would was that we were in the middle of training about 20 Lilly employees on decision science, DADQ. We called it decision science. And I had really wanted them to get really steeped in it. They were going to go train 200 to 300 managers who were going to go train 2,000 to 3,000 employees. And really wanted them to be able to walk the talk. And they'd only tolerate so much of this kind of training. So as part of their 4 days worth of training, they volunteered for 2 days and sat in that workshop with the teens as a one-on-one coach. And it was phenomenal.
It's amazing.
And I had people coming back to me. I had a couple people coming back to me at Lilly saying, look, we will do that again just for the adult learning. Like the fact that the kids got to learn at the end is like icing on the cake. But I mean, we had some pretty senior folks who normally would not give up that much of their time. But when it was for the kids, they were in. and they derived they sat through and interacted and got a whole lot more meaning out of it. So I want to just throw a couple of those experiences out there to say there's a lot of different ways to get involved in the spreading and the sharing, whether that is, as the title of the workshop was, in front of teens or behind the scenes. And so what we wanted to do now is, on the flip side of that paper that you had where you wrote down your ideas about your mentor, you should find 3 sort of sections with question prompts. At the very top, there are 3 phrases, just like on the slide. We'd like you to circle whichever bucket you feel most squarely that you reside in, right? So whether you have, this is just like that poll question that we did in the very beginning.
So in front of teens, behind the scenes, or in retirement, however you define that for yourself. Which do you feel like you would like to explore or know more about or work in, want to grow in?
And then what we'll do is we'll give you a couple minutes here to reflect on the 3 questions that are on that sheet. Collect your ideas. They don't have to be well written out. You're not being tested or anything. It's for yourself, so prompts. So given that bucket that you circled up above, what sorts of events or activities do you think are possible in terms of spreading DADQ, DS to teens? What might your role, and this is what's your comfort zone? What's your skill set? What might your role be? And then as you think about that, what are, just the next step or 2? Small. When I came back from meeting Amy, it was just reach out to that lady at work who does community stuff. And that was my action item.
Right.
So anyway, take a couple minutes, think that through. Your attention back up. We've got just a few minutes before we're done here. We move into a couple more talks. Just wanted to hear from folks, particularly if in your discussion you heard what you thought was the fantastic beginning of a great idea or some great opportunity or actions or whatever. So does anyone want to rat out a neighbor that you thought had a great start to something? And if not, you can also volunteer your own. But we just want to hear some of the ideas that folks were brewing. Over here, Amy, with the Sherry's over here.
Hi.
We shared an idea.
Oh, nice.
Same idea on the same team.
Oh, look, it was made in heaven.
Twinsies.
It was a match made in heaven. Yeah, so Jen and I are on the same team. But so one of the things that Jen and I both do, all separately, but we volunteer with Junior Achievement. So I don't know how familiar you are, but that's an organization, right, where we go into elementary schools or high schools and you teach business curriculum basically to students. And so we were thinking, in our day job, we teach decision making to adults. In our hobby, we teach, business to students. Why couldn't we marry the 2? So, maybe we could reach out to our Junior Achievement contact, talk to them about, updating the curriculum, right? Like, how do you get decision-focused curriculum into their Junior Achievement curriculum?
Fantastic, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, very cool.
Here, I can take it.
Anybody else?
Ah, great. Would you mind passing it? She's a yeller.
Yeah, my name's Tracy. In my day job, I develop quite a lot of learning content, experiential learning for decision making. Okay, for the general population of professionals who would not be here, or would not study DQ, but they're fully invested in the ideas. So what I've actually been thinking about recently, and your workshop is just tied right in, is doing a project with teens. Because I was actually I taught high school when I was in grad school, and I was actually a foster parent for a while of teens. Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. You'll need to buy me a drink.
Yeah.
So.
Got you covered.
So, anyway, you just read my mind. I'm local in Denver, and my personal favorite outreach group for troubled teens is called Urban Peak. I highly recommend them to anyone. I think they're only in Denver, but my husband and I left. They're in our wills. They're an incredible group. So, Jim was suggesting, if we were gonna, we were trying to build kind of automated content, so it's like interactive, with, what if I make this decision? And like Jim was suggesting some games that you've worked on, and
Yeah,
I-
the candy game.
If you've
Yeah.
got those, I'd love to, apply them. So it'd be great.
Great, thank
Very
you.
cool.
That sounds
Yeah.
exciting.
Anybody else? Other
Anyone?
takers?
No takers. No brilliant idea. Yeah. Yeah. You had some good ideas. You were telling me about them.
So I'm actually going to yes and the from design thinking her idea. I teach innovation and entrepreneurship to high school students, and one of the things we do is we play a lot of card games to develop a pitch or develop connections. I'm wondering if you could build a card game to build scenarios and then have them solve the scenarios, develop lots of different options based on their own values here. So it occurred to me that that would be a really fun game for them as well as a fun game here. I mean, who wouldn't want to play a card game?
Right, right.
There are a couple of folks that you should be introduced to.
Jim Philly, Jay Anderson. The other thing is, I'm just testing right now. It's like an escape room, but it's like a kit to have them have to solve a problem and undo locks and do all this stuff, but they have to answer all these questions and be able to problem solve to get through the process and have it be around decision making. So, yeah.
We're,
He has an idea. We're almost
Well,
out of
sorry.
time. Are we out of time?
yeah, we are. We got to
Okay.
give it to Bill.
You'll have to tell me later. He's my brother, so it'll be okay.
Thank you all
But
for your
we
time
need
and
to
your
have
thoughts.
we need to tell them what to do with the paper.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. So with the paper, if you would notice, on the one side below the values activity, there's a spot where you could put your name and your email. So one thing that we'd like to try and do, we will, if you fill that out, give it to us, we will scan it and email it back to you. That way your action items didn't show up in your email to-do box,
You
so
will
to speak.
get the notes
Right?
back.
And there's an opportunity there. We'd like to connect sort of folks that were interested in doing something just in a simple email, group email. And if you have ideas to bounce off each other or can help, it gives you a chance to reach out.
So if you
don't feel
don't want to
alone.
be on that email list, there's a check the box for do not. But otherwise, leave it unchecked if you'd like to be in a group email where I'll send you the slides and some stuff. At the end of the slide deck are some tools for you, so you can always look through those.
Before
Yeah.
you leave today, just leave the paper up on the front table up here. Thank you.
Thank you.